Hello there. Welcome to the first episode of my podcast. The first struggles that I had when creating this podcast were with the voice that I wanted to use when I talked about it. I wasn't sure if I wanted to use like a regular speaking voice like this because it's natural, or like if I want to be a radio guy and host myself a podcast, or if I want to maybe be an old man with a podcast, because that could be kind of fun too. So I wasn't sure. So I guess I'm going to try and speak naturally, but it's hard because when you put a microphone in front of my face, I tend to want to ham it up. But I'm going to do what I can to keep it natural, just like we're having a conversation, me and you. So this is the first episode of this podcast. It's going to be a mostly poetry-based podcast, but I'm going to try and do some fun things with poetry. I'm going to share one of my poems in each episode, at least one, like a poem with some meat to it. And I'm going to share some haikus and limericks and whatnot. I'm going to feature a poem from maybe my childhood or, just a classic poem that I like or that's affected me in some way. I'm going to talk about old video games, I think. I might talk about sports sometimes. I might talk about wrestling sometimes. All in a poetic way. So if you're cool with those things, keep listening. We got some really fun things on tap in terms of a big monthly story that I'm going to be releasing. I'm going to try anyway. I'm going to try and keep this on a timeline as best as I can. But, life. But anyway, my plan is for 3 standard podcasts per month and then 1 longer story-based musical audio play production thing. Right now, the things I have in the works are a medieval story about a dragon and a king and some cyclical mayhem that goes on with them. I have a concept metal album from the point of view of an orange. I have a whole bunch of ghost stories and stuff lined up for the next season of Haunt Manor. And if you were paying attention last month, I released a Christmas special. So if you guys listen to the Christmas special, the monthly thing that I'm going to release is going to be along those lines. That kind of a 45 minutes to an hour long variety show kind of a thing. So if you're cool with all of that, tentatively, this is going to be called the Plod Project. I think that's a fun name for it. It's been the first ever email address that I ever had was the Plod Project because it took me so long to get an email in those times before we could afford a computer. I never had an email, so it took forever. It was a plodding project. It was a Plod Project. And it's taken me forever to get around to doing a podcast too. And with the podcast, I have the freedom to do whatever the hell I want and use all the skills that I've accumulated over the years. And I can repackage, repurpose, recreate all sorts of stories that I've been telling in other mediums. So yeah, it should be a fun adventure, and thank you for clicking. Welcome to the Plod Project, episode 1. Cheers. Welcome to the poem portion of the Plod Project podcast. Poem portion, Plod Project podcast. Poem portion, Plod Project podcast. No. For this poem, since it's the first one, I wanted to start with something nice and positive. This poem is a reminder for anybody who needs it, and it goes like this. You are worthy. You are worthy of a lifetime of second chances granted with every sunrise when the night reboots the day. Control your emotions, alter your reality, delete negativity. You are worthy. You are worthy of 1,440 minutes daily to use your senses to the apex of their ability. You are worthy of aiming the crosshairs of your gaze towards every single miracle this circular planet can offer up. You are worthy of light refracting through dewdrops on spider webs. You are worthy of the path cast by the moon on the water. And you are worthy of rainbows. You are worthy of drinking with your ears. From subtle sip to intoxication all the way through to hangover, you are worthy of wind chimes. You are worthy of every flavor of music on the infinite buffet, and you are damn sure worthy of lullabies. When dollars and cents stop making sense, remember that you are worthy of scents. Vanilla incense and graham cracker campfire, pine needle, new car, morning bakery, and baby powder. You are worthy of lilac. So wake up and smell the coffee, then stop and smell the flowers, because you are worthy of the scents best connected with memory and every scent not yet committed to it. You are worthy of the double-edged gift that is your tongue. You are worthy of taste and speech. Make friends with your tastes buds. Make friends with your taste buds. Lose your voice quarterly, because you are worthy of the passion that it takes to achieve such a feat. You are worthy of whatever food you choose. Whatever tickles your tongue and dances in your mouth, you are worthy of eating and yelling. You are worthy of touching, and being touched by touching. You are worthy of warm, soft, and smooth. You are worthy of cashmere, fleece, and silk. You are worthy of back rubs, kisses, and cuddling. You are worthy of holding hands, footsies, and fucking. You are worthy of all of your experiences. And you are worthy of rest. You are worthy of giving either too many fucks or not giving any, because you are worthy of choice. You are worthy of being selfish. You are worthy of being called worthy. You are worthy of every word in this poem. So each week on this podcast, I'd like to feature a classic poem. And it's not going to be classic in the traditional sense, I don't think, but classic in my world. This is one of the first poems, I guess, that I was ever exposed to is grade 4. Shout out Mrs. Walker. My first exposure to Shel Silverstein. And she would read us Roald Dahl and stuff like that, and we'd sit cross-legged, and this is where I found Where the Sidewalk Ends. So I can't think of a better place to start than with Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. There's a place where the sidewalk ends, and before the street begins, and there the grass grows soft and white, and there the sun burns crimson bright, and there the moonbird rests from his flight to cool in the peppermint wind. Let us leave this place where the smoke blows black, and the dark street winds and bends. Past the pits where the asphalt flowers grow, we shall walk with a walk that is measured and slow, and watch where the chalk-white arrows go, to the place where the sidewalk ends. Yes, we'll walk with a walk that is measured and slow, and we'll go where the chalk-white arrows go. For the children, they mark, and the children, they know the place where the sidewalk ends. I'll also be doing a haiku as part of my podcast, because it's my podcast and I can do a haiku if I want to do a haiku. I have a lot of haikus, but I don't have a lot of good haikus. I have like 3, so it's actually going to be a real challenge for me to come up with good haikus for you guys to listen to. But I'm up for the challenge. So this is my favorite haiku that I ever wrote. It goes like this. A haiku from women to men. Bathroom cleanliness. I will always aim to please. Will you aim to, please? And now for the limerick portion of the podcast. I'll also be doing limericks because, again, my podcast, my rules. Seemed like a good place to start. The very first limerick that I ever wrote when I was very young and still reading Shel Silverstein like it was fresh. I took the garbage out one day, threw the garbage bag in the dumpster, and there was like a skittering sound, and I climbed up on it and kind of looked in, and there was a little raccoon, and he was stuck there, and I don't know, I told the neighbor, but I felt really bad. There's nothing I can do. I can't jump in the dumpster. And he might have rabies. He might attack me. I don't know. He's all boxed in. But I was, affected, so I did what I do. When I'm affected, I write a poem about it, like all those mean people always told me to do. So here it is, the first limerick that I ever created. Trapped in the dumpster, the poor little raccoon. We can only hope he'll be free soon. His little heart will pound, as will mine, until he's found. That poor little raccoon. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Do you ever ask yourself,
How much horsepowers do I really need?
the answer is more, always more. Get ready for the all-new 2016 Ford Scrote. 275,000 horsepower motor, standard automatic transmission, automatically standard, man-power windows, trunk. Goes from 0 to 60, and the engine is mad loud. The 2016 Ford Scrote. This car has balls.
Welcome to the 8-Bit Backtrack. My initial intention with the 8-Bit Backtrack was to review an old 8-Bit NES game. And the first one I wanted to go with was the Friday the 13th game for original Nintendo, because that game used to scare the hell out of me when Jason would pop out, and the music was terrible and the graphics were bad by today's standards, but at the time that game impacted me. So I started doing a bit of research on the game. I read a few other reviews, and all the other reviews were really good, and I got a little bit intimidated by the really good reviews, and I ended up writing something completely different. It ended up being like a fan fiction kind of a thing based on that game. So if you ever played that game before, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And if not, hopefully you can just enjoy a funny story. I'm not sure where the 8-Bit Backtrack goes from here, but I'm kind of curious to see where it goes, because I ended up with something that I thought was more fun than a review. So next time, maybe it'll be a review, maybe it'll be fan fiction. We'll see whatever the hell happens. Again, my podcast, my rules. I had to blow into the cartridge to get it to work. I blew into the gray console as well for good measure. I pushed it into the slot and hit power. It fired up. I guess there was dust in the nodes. The opening screen was a knife in his eye and a rainbow behind his mask. This was going to be epic. I chose Mark. I heard he was the fastest. I stood briefly in front of a cabin, jumped once, threw a rock, and took off right. At the end of the screen, we jumped forward into the exact same scene, once more and once more like peeling sticky notes. Finally, a zombie attacks. I throw a few rocks directly over his head. I either need to get closer or farther away. I opt for farther away, but he chases me down in an awkward and goofy ballet. I steer Mark left and right on either side of the zombie, doing his frenzied best to keep up with the steps. My power is drained from zombie intimacy, and I am dead. Goodbye, Mark. You jumped really high. Who's next? George. George couldn't jump very high. He threw rocks faster than Mark. 1, 2, 3 zombies quickly fell, and a lighter and a knife appeared hovering in midair. I jumped, and just barely managed to grab both. I slaughtered my way through 4 more zombies, 2 knives each, and came to another cabin. I entered the darkness that it held. There were children there. Little children, and they were afraid of him. Their fireplace had gone out. I used my lighter and didn't let it wash over me how lucky I was that I'd found a lighter in midair not 2 minutes ago. With the fireplace lit, these children would most certainly be safe. After fumbling in the dark for another 3 minutes, I found the way out. Back on the 2-dimensional path with forever repeating background, I fought another 2 zombies who dropped a jar of red goo. Health, maybe? George wouldn't know. He hasn't been hit. George and I found a crossroad in our path that led to a forest. We have to inspect. Could he be in the woods? The woods were dark and alive with danger, wolves on the ground and bats in the air. George fought bravely, but once he dropped his knife, he was easily overcome. Tag in Debbie. Debbie was in a cabin on the far side of the map, an area I had yet to visit. She started as the others did, pausing in front of the cabin to jump once and throw one rock. We checked our map, and Debbie and I were a long way from the forest. That adventure would have to wait. We were close to one of the larger cabins. I'd hoped we'd find another lighter along the way in case their fireplace had also gone out. I guess the warmth and light keep him away. Debbie was as slow as George, but she could jump far higher. Between going over top and mowing them down with rocks, we passed 10 more zombies and collected 3 lighters, a knife, and another jar of goo. We were headed left at a good clip when the alarms went off. The timer started and those kids were in trouble. I checked the map. We were close. We bounded to the cabin armed with a small knife in the knowledge that he was here. 3 faceless children advised us that fire does more damage. We headed around the first corner and into a hallway. Around the next corner was another hallway with a fireplace at the end of it, extinguished. We lit it, made it rain fire, lighters all day, and then he was there, slashing and moving. A tip of the hat to a Mike Tyson punch-out, Debbie managed to throw a few poorly placed rocks that sailed 2 left and 1 right past him into the wall behind. The fight didn't last long. Debbie never stood a chance. Paul was next. Now Paul and I thought that he could only get us in the cabins. We were wrong. I didn't get to spend too much time with Paul. Paul wasn't fast enough, and we'll leave it at that. I headed out with Laura as the sun set on the camp and in real life. She was as fast as Mark and stationed fairly close to the forest. What secrets did the lush darkness hold? We jumped over zombies until we found and entered the forest again. After fighting a few wolves and surviving some bats, we acquired a key from the ether. We headed north and left and north and left and north and right until we stopped in front of an old wooden door. We used the key, held our breath, and opened. We could have never been ready. If we trained for 1,000 years, it was his mother. His mother's head, severed and floating in the air like the knives and keys and goo, cackling at us from beyond logic and the grave. We ran, screen after screen, blind through the forest. Jumping wolves and outrunning bats led us to a clearing. We paused in a cabin. Laura had been seriously hurt on the trip back. Her health was below quarter bar. We lit another fireplace and 3 more faceless monster children told secrets in the dark. There's something good in the cave, they promised. I checked our map for the cave. It was there. Maybe the fire they talked about was in the cave. I wondered if Laura would make it that far. Around the next corner of the poorly lit cabin was a gift from 8-bit heaven, a machete. We struggled to find the cabin exit and were headed towards the cave when the alarm went off again and the timer started. Checking the map was a kick in the groin. We were a mile away. We'll never make it, Laura. But by God, we have to try. We ran. We ran possessed. The machete gave us an edge where jumping failed, and we went left, and never knowing that it wasn't right. I checked the map to see how much further, and to my horror, to my disbelief, we'd gone the wrong way. A map for a 2-dimensional side-scrolling scene should be easy to navigate, and I have failed. I let those children die. All the speed in the world couldn't help Laura with me here to foul it up. Rest, you sweet angels. We took out a few more zombies with ease thanks to the machete. And a few screens later, we were blindsided. It was him, loose on the path. The way we came was blocked. There was no escape. We had to fight. Laura dodged his attacks and slashed at him over and over, leaping over him as he charged and slashing his back on the way by. She was really dealing damage now. His bar was less than hers. This could happen. Just a few more jumps. Stick and move. Stick and move. One more hit. She got him. She got him. He's dead. He's finally dead. The screen went black, and white text conveyed the message that Jason was not dead, and now he's even stronger. I looked at Laura's depleted health bar. I thought of Mark and how I wasted him. I thought of ill-prepared Debbie. I thought of Jason's mom's severed head floating in the velvet blackness of the forest. I thought of how we'd run, and how far Laura and I had come, all to fight Jason again. And then maybe again? That's kind of his thing. He just keeps coming back over and over and over until the movies stop making money. When Laura uses the last of her health bar, it'll just be me and Chrissy, and I don't even know how high she can jump. In that moment, I felt beat. But Laura and I had come too far to give up now. It wasn't just Jason who was stronger. The zombies moved faster now, and we were immediately ambushed by 3 rabid and decomposing flesh constructs. No jump would be high enough, and no blade sharp enough to evade the bloodbath that followed. Goodbye, Laura. You can finally stop running. Chrissy was in the cabin nearest to the cave with the fire that did more damage, if those faceless devil children were telling the truth. There was no choice. Chrissy was surprisingly fast and jumped with the best of them. We found a knife right away and laid waste to the new and improved zombies as if they weren't. In no time, we were at the cave mouth. We paused, took a breath, headed in. We were pounced on by wolves and bats 2.0. The first half of the health was gone almost instantly, but we fought them off. Then he appeared, out of nowhere. The way was blocked. He came in fast. His pattern was new. He was unorthodox in his attacks, and he slashed the story of his pain in each swing. I knew that Chrissy would be no match for an angry Jason, and I think deep down, digital Chrissy knew as well. I'm still not sure if it was me that gave up, or her. But it doesn't change the end of the story anyway. You and your friends are dead. Game over. I just wanted to thank everybody so much for clicking the link and having a listen to this podcast. I had a lot of fun making it, and I'm hoping to continue having fun making it. It's going to keep me writing and keep me doing creative things and help keep you up to date with what I'm doing. Speaking of what I'm doing, I'll be part of a punk rock and poetry show on January 28th at the Central in Toronto. There's going to be some bands there and some other poets other than myself, some punk rock stuff going on. It looks like it's going to be a pay what you can show, and I'll keep you up to date on that as we get closer. So yeah, thanks again for listening. If you like what you hear, leave a comment on my Facebook or send me a private message or add me on Twitter at PoJob, P.o.e. What else? I think that's it. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for listening. Cheers.